you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome to the horror show. I'm Cecil, Laird.
Rob Wolfman.
And Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to do another brand new movie review. This is another of the A24 films that have become available so frequently in recent times, it seems like. But yeah, this is the newest outing from, what's the director's name again?
Garland?
Alex Garland, right, exactly. Yeah. From the same director as Ex Machina, most well known, right? What else was there?
Annihilation.
Right, I did like
right.
Annihilation quite a bit.
Both of which I was all about. This, on the other hand,
This was I that's the thing. We did a trailer reaction for this, and none of us, I don't think any of us quite really grasped what was going on. And I think that was, at the time I was like, oh, that's good trailer design. You don't give away the whole movie in your trailer for once. That's nice. But unfortunately, it turns out it's because there's not really a whole lot there, and unfortunately a lot of it is just kind of weirdness for weirdness' sake, it seems like. I mean, here's the thing. It's gonna be one of those where I talked to Robert afterwards. I was like, this is gonna be one of those where people are just gonna say we didn't understand it. And it's like, I'm guaranteed there's gonna be that contingent for this film.
Well,
Because, you know, if I'm going to start off, in case you haven't figured it out, yeah, I was not the biggest fan of this film either. Oh, no, Fuego, I guess, started it by saying his little thoughts real quick. So I'll let you expound in just a second, Fuego. But yeah, I was not a fan of how the story played out. I felt like it was leading to a crescendo that was completely out of nowhere and made no sense to me. Like, it was just felt again like weirdness for weirdness' sake. But I will say this: pretty piece of shit is what it was.
It was the prettiest pile of shit we've seen all year.
Yeah, because man, was it gorgeous! It was such a well shot movie. But man alive, I was not about the content within. Robert?
Yeah. No, I was not a fan of this movie either. Again, it was visually, it was gorgeous, like all the A24 movies are. Like, I will give them that credit. Like, visually they're beautiful to look at. Like, their shots are very well set up, their sceneries and everything like that. But this movie didn't go anywhere. And there was times where certain characters, I'm like, I had no empathy for them. Some of the acting I did appreciate, especially with one of the guys. He actually played Frankenstein's creature in Penny Dreadful. He plays basically one of the guys, well, one of the people in this and everything like that.
Oh,
and,
just one?
Well, yeah, no, you know. But no, he did phenomenal. And honestly, she did, like, the girl, our lead, she did a great job for basically holding the movie her own.
Jessie Buckley, man, I've been a big fan of her since Wild Rose. She was great. She was great in Chernobyl, which I know Cecil watched.
This was a very Rebecca Hall Nighthouse-ish performance. That's the closest I could liken it to, for something that we've seen recently. And they both did a really good job. I think Rebecca Hall's hit more because the way the film played out, and, you know, because that was a gorgeously shot film too. Before I go ahead and expand on your thoughts.
Yeah, so I wasn't a fan of it, but I'm not going to say I hated it. I'm not going to say it was like a total piece of shit or anything, but I will, to Cecil, your point, man. There are definitely going to be a lot of people who are going to say, oh, you just didn't understand it. And there's going to be an audience for this movie, but I feel like I did understand it, and I still wasn't a big fan of it. This was very much a rumination on grief and guilt, and also the internal decay that it can bring about within you, and how, as is manifested without spoiling in the third act, how grief can be a regurgitation and a cyclical sort of situation in that regard. So yeah, this is wrought with symbolism, but it is of a pretentious art for art's sake, trying to go for just visuals at times. Because the third act, the film changes so drastically, and it almost, there's going to be some people who interpret it as actually transpiring, some who interpret it as dreamlike, and, you know, what was really going on in this woman's head and in, you know, the actual real world and stuff, because she's so much living in her own head with, you know, this tragedy that happens within her life. And that's why, I guess, if we're segueing into story, it's essentially another one of those where there's been a loss and a woman is in isolation, and you know, what's real and what's not. And the audience is really, with this one, it's left relatively ambiguous at a lot of turns. And I can appreciate that, but just like you guys were saying, it felt kind of half-baked and underdeveloped, and it was much more reliant on symbolism than actually making things a little more clear-cut. And that was Garland's decision. It's his least accessible film, because Annihilation and Ex Machina were both pretty straightforward flicks, man. You know, this is very much going for surreal and eventually visceral. And I mean, people who love Mother, and I love that Aronofsky movie, I think may gravitate towards this and be into it. But
still, the imagery in that third act is going to turn a lot of people off, even within the contingency of people that like the movie.
Yeah, true. It does kind of feel like it veers into a completely different sort of film from the very contemplative. I mean, really, it's a rumination on manifestations of the most menacing masculinity that you can find. I mean, Alex Garland as a man, I guess that takes a lot for him to explore these themes, you know, as a male himself. But it fell flat in a lot of ways for me, despite its ambition at times. So.
Well, that's a good enough segue into the story itself, right? I mean, you kind of just covered it. There's been a loss, and she's taken refuge in this isolated, not cabin.
It's a cottage.
Cottage, there you go.
It's a cottage up in northern England.
And it's gorgeous, and the scenery is just incredible all around, and Garland definitely takes the time to, like, have tons of transitional shots of just pretty things in between scenes and stuff like that, like a shot of a field, a shot of a sunset, a shot of this, and then we'll go back to a new scene and stuff like that, you know. So he really focused on making it a beautiful movie, which he did succeed. But then again, there were times where it was downright ugly with what was on the scene, or on the screen rather, in the third act. And not ugly insofar as suddenly the filmmaking goes bad, it's just literally what they're showing is
the visuals get pretty heavy.
Really. And repetitive. And, like, it's like, when it happens the first time, you're like, wow, that was disturbing. And then it happens, like, 3 more times. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, oh, man. But, you know, the story was unfulfilling, is unfortunately what I would classify it as. It's so wide open. What Fuego said earlier is probably a pretty clear-cut interpretation of what you're talking about, you know, the regurgitation. But there's also an element of rebirth, you know, in there as well. So, like, you know, there's an element of you trying to, you know, get yourself reborn. Well, you enter into a cocoon of some sorts, you know, a pregnancy cocoon, and you get yourself reborn, but you end up coming out with the same flaws you had before going into the process of trying to fix yourself, kind of thing. So there are many ways of interpreting and stuff. And, you know, it just didn't land with me, though. You know, I gotta say, the imagery gets so much that the message you're trying to convey with it is, like, so far in the back of your mind that it's like, I don't know. Or at least it was for me. So
I don't really have much else to echo off of that.
Okay. Well, why don't you start off talking about the acting? What do you think of the acting?
Acting was fantastic. Like I kind of touched on before in just the overall thoughts, everyone did great, and we only really had about 3 or 4 different actors, give or take. But the 2 main ones that we had throughout the film, they did amazing. One of our guys, like I said, he played Frankenstein's creature in Penny Dreadful and a few other things. I just can't remember what he's been in. But for him, playing, in a sense, multiple different roles, kind of, it worked great. Our main girl, she sold it for the scenes that she needed to. Like, that didn't really pull me out. The acting and visuals, that didn't pull me out of the film. It was just the lack of an actual burn going through this movie is what pulled me out. There was no satisfying end, and I got nothing out of it. How
was the acting for you,
Yeah.
No, the acting was stellar, as we kind of alluded to, and as seems to be kind of the general consensus. It's really scripting issues at times, and how they tried to be a little too surrealistic or whatever, you know, or too overt and offensive, and, you know, assault of the senses, whatever. But the acting, I don't really think in any regard. I mean, there's 3 other characters, I guess, now that I think about it, besides our 2 leads. But yeah, so it does feel like another one of those pandemic releases where, in very small cast, because of those restrictions and stuff. But Jessie Buckley, as I mentioned earlier, she did a music film called Wild Rose a number of years ago, and I've just loved her ever since, and her career seems to be just rising, and her stock is going up. And so it is probably inevitable for the fact that The Night House came out like a year or so removed from this one, and with dealing with some similar themes of grief and loss and whatnot. The performances are going to be compared to one another. I think they're pretty comparable in quality, at least for me. I thought Jessie Buckley was great in this, and the dude that Robert was alluding to was good. Even the family member of Buckley's that we get a few scenes with, I thought he was effective as well. So.
And the friend on the phone too did a good job.
Yeah, she was alright. She was alright. There's something about her face, man. It just bugged the crap out of me.
Yeah, it was kind of like a Wicked Witch of the West sort of situation.
Yeah.
A wee bit, but yeah, I mean, she does some accents here and there, and then I was just like, oh, she's American.
Yeah, well, yeah, I picked up on that and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just one of those faces. I'm just like, you're just like a bitch.
So one thing I want to definitely touch on for the film that I was actually really impressed with was not just the atmospheric visuals, but the atmospheric audio.
Yeah.
There was a lot of really cool stuff, I thought. So at one point, the character goes into a tunnel and starts like making noises to echo. And then those noises are later used as unnerving bits of score. And it's really fucking cool. I was hoping they were going to do and I thought I remembered something like that from the trailer. And when they did it, I was like, oh, this really fits really fucking cool. And then they did something else too with a score that I've never seen done before. And I was really impressed with it. At one point, our lead character is in a moment of grief, and she screams in a particular pitch, and the musical note matches the pitch of her scream for like an extended note. And then it veers up and off away from her. And it's like, I was like, that is so fucking, like, it was chilling. And I was like, that is such really amazing and interesting use of score. And I had never seen anything like that before, so I had to really shout that out, because it's not often that I get to say I've never seen that before in a film nowadays.
I guess I didn't pick up on that. Was that a church thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So you picked up on it too, Fuego?
I did, yeah, where the priest is observing her, and it was like there was the scream, and then there was added emphasis in the post, of the audio and everything, and that scene in the tunnel I thought was so cool, because Jessie Buckley actually got her start as a musician. She was on I think the Irish equivalent of America's Next Talent or whatever one of those competition shows is, and so that's how she was discovered. So she was a musician initially, and she has a scene where she actually plays the piano.
Yeah.
That's her playing the piano. She sings and plays piano and guitar, incredibly talented. And then she segued into acting later on. But I just thought when she figured out how far her little just call into the tunnel was going to go,
echo.
She started doing even more, and she was at one point harmonizing with herself the echoes as they got more distant and everything, and just the reusing of that later on in the film to add a little bit of just eeriness and dread, I thought was very effective. And there is a decent amount of kind of choral, almost churchy kind of chanty stuff that's used throughout to also besides that bit that really adds an essence of menace, I think, and that I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And then let's talk about the effects. There was a lot of makeup effects done for a particular person, and then there was one digital effect that I do have to say
I did not like it.
Oh,
pulled
dude,
me
it looks
out
so
of the
bad.
movie. Are we all talking about the youngin?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
It looked so bad. Well,
That
I
was
even made
really
a
rough.
comment in the theater on it.
You did. I heard you, and I did not disagree with you.
Yeah.
And it made me wonder if they had an actual younger body, like somebody who filmed, and then they just transposed
Yeah.
on.
That's exactly what they did.
That was the weakest part, I would say, visually of this movie.
Yeah, and it was really distracting for me, unfortunately. Oddly so, where
It
everything
didn't
else
lend
looked
to the-
good, but this was this was rough, and they used it a number of times, and I was like, Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Well, also too is like
It was particularly bad the first couple times we saw it. Later
especially
on,
like during like the darker scenes, it didn't look as bad, but his head was still way too big for the body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
But the practical effects that we got, especially in like the third act, that mix of CGI with the practical, it looked really good, and it was done well with the lighting that they used.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Cecil was saying earlier, it got to the point where it just kept getting done over and over again too much. It was just like, all right, this is getting a little heavy.
You know, I want to shout out the lighting too, real quick, because the lighting was actually used to raise tension in a scene, and I really dug the way that they used it.
The flashback,
the exterior lighting of the home.
Oh, with the sensory lights.
Yeah,
That
I thought that was
that
used
one,
particularly
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
They tried to do something like this in Halloween 2018, but it didn't make any sense because if he was moving around the way that he would be the one triggering the lights rather than being able to move in the darkness without being sensed. But this was just used for like sometimes people just disappear when the lights blank out and stuff like that. It was used very, very effectively in that one particular segment of the film. And so I got to give a shout out again. That's using lighting to sell your story when a lot of people don't bother trying to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's not. It's very much an A24 slow burn in a lot of ways. So expect that if you guys do, plan on going and seeing this. But you do eventually get some gore, and we're not going to hint at that too much. There's a scene with a hand and something going down, and some splitting, so to speak, that I thought was interesting, and the way that it was kind of manifested, and also the aftermath of one particular character's death. I thought when you see it and how it correlates with some of the I guess
other injuries.
Yeah, and some of the grief and some how she's kind of visualizing stuff, I guess, and also I mean, since we're kind of wrapping things up, guys, and we haven't touched upon it yet, it did have some major folk horror vibes too, very much so.
I was catching on with that, but I just couldn't remember like what the creature thing was supposed to be.
Well, there's that weird altar, which it looks like a pagan altar inside the church, and just the juxtaposition of this pagan altar inside of this Christian church, it seemed to totally contradict. And but then again, the film was about just the contradiction of gender, the juxtaposition and duality of death and rebirth and light and dark. And so I can tell that Garland did put a lot of thought into this. It's just the execution of it and making it cohesive and kind of makes sense, I think, for that. I don't know. I used the word pretentious earlier, and I do feel like this film was kind of pretentious, man. And at the end of the day, that's kind of my judgment on it. So
I felt the same. I feel like after discussing it with you guys, I liked more aspects of the film than maybe I gave it credit for. At first, it was just like, yeah, it was pretty. But no, they used the sound design very interestingly. The acting was good as well. It's really just the story and the third act I wasn't a big fan of, because the story didn't lead up to anything satisfying in my opinion, and the third act is so far removed from what the rest of the film seems to be that it was like having whiplash in the movie. Not referring to the movie Whiplash, I'm just saying it's literally like I was watching a movie this way, and all of a sudden I had to turn this way, and I broke my neck trying to change gears from what they had set up for the first 2/3 of the film.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts from you? No.
Not really.
Robert said he didn't really have much to say about this one.
No, I really didn't. And I honestly, I even said to Cecil on the way out, I'm like, I'd rather watch Midsommar again.
Yeah,
go through.
I would too. This was a rough. It wasn't as bad as In Fabric was. To me, In Fabric is like one of the lowest A24 experiences, but this is on the lower end of A24 experiences for me. Even though there was a lot. I mean, it's so pretty. Like I would put it on and mute it, and just do work around the room and put on a podcast or something and just have cool visuals going in the background.
Oh,
That-
especially
you know.
early on, man, where she's walking, and like the scenes we see in
Gorgeous.
the trailer, where
Yeah.
she's walking through the forest and
Yeah,
everything.
in the
just
tunnel and
the scenery of greenery and just how breathtaking it was. I mean, the location scouting was terrific. This film had a lot of interesting ambitiousness to it, but it was very, very uneven, unfortunately. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it then, you guys. Let us know in the comments down below if you end up seeing Men. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I don't even know if we actually said it was Men at the beginning of the review. but nonetheless, let us know what your thoughts are. If you have any interest or if you skipped this one and you just watched our review instead. We still haven't really spoiled anything. If you are interested, it's about an hour and 40 minutes, so it's not that long of a sit, but it did start to feel a little long when the third act kept going and going and going. But yeah, thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do as well. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
Rope the Wolfman.
And gracias, Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.